What if you could read someone's mind? What if you got somebody to, say, choose a card, and then you gave them your phone to call a friend or Starbucks, the local police department, or even some random number made up of their birthday and card PIN number? And what if the person on the other side of the phone who answered was able to divine and guess that very specific card that they chose? And what if after hanging up with this person and going, oh my gosh, this is pretty amazing, you showed them that the exact number, regardless of what number they chose, was actually a contact in your phone with a picture of the card that they had chosen in advance. Before they even chose the card, that picture was already there. And what if that contact information, besides having the picture of the card and the number and the name, also had some personal information about that person? Do you think that would be a cool effect? But what if the same number that they have dialed, the first number or the last number, and it's up to you, was literally the exact number of another card, randomly selected, that was going to be in a deck of cards where you could just count it out and immediately understand or divine what card was at the end of that number? And what if somebody else immediately after says, nah, you can't, I bet you can't do it again. And now instead of using a card, maybe you used a drawing. You got them to draw something on a piece of paper. And you got them to call some random number or a Starbucks or the local fire department. And they were able to give them an exact representation of what that drawing was. How would that affect your audience? So that's what the Diverter Plus is all about. The creation of an illusion that you are in control of, where your spectators will be able to be wowed by your mind-reading abilities. Before we get into how the app actually works, I'd like to give you a little bit of history behind it. First of all, the idea, or original idea, comes from MARC KERSTEIN'S effect, where he basically has an iOS version of this app that is basic. And the effect that you can do with that, of course, is pretty cool. Now, what this app does is it kind of takes MARC KERSTEIN'S idea and kind of expands on it so that you can do a lot more and you can have a lot more wow moments with it as well. Now, just to let you know, if you want to find out more about MARC KERSTEIN and his effect and how to do it and the whole mentalism element of it, highly recommend that you get that from theillusionist.com. And I think you can get it for free, and or at least if you join the magic stream. Okay, so all of this stuff is available for you. It's only like $10 or something like that, and you are able to really understand it on a much deeper level. So what I'm going to show you here are just for some of the ideas that I came up with based on some of the stuff that I learned from the illusionist.com. So let's kind of get into it. The first thing that you're going to notice is that when you download this, the icon looks like the old style of the phone icon. So this is though you can still tell the difference between the actual phone and this phone. Now, of course, you want to make it look like it's the phone icon if you're going to use it, right? So one of the first things that you want to do is put it down together with the main icons. Why? Because that hides the name. Now, if you don't want to have it down with all of your other main icons, your 5 primary icons, then what you can do is you can just hold it down, click on edit, and then you can change it from diverter to phone, so that when you touch it and people are looking at you, your spectators are looking at you, it's very obvious that it is the phone icon and that you're actually going to make a call, so that nobody has any suspicion that you're going to do some woo-woo mentalism on them. When you click on the icon, then you get the phone screen. And to get to the setup within the phone screen, click on the top 3 little dots on the upper right-hand side. Before you get into the actual setup, there are 3 settings that you should consider. The first setting is going to be masked number. If you turn it on, that means that the number that your spectator types into the phone is the number that is going to show when the call is made. If you turn it off, then it'll actually show the other number that you have put into the diverter. The second one is sound. Now, if you want your when people click on the buttons, it makes do 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 do, you know, the phone sound stuff, then you go ahead and turn that on. I personally don't, so I leave it off. The third one is going to be proximity or immediate. Now, proximity basically means that after they type the number, you actually have to put the number up to your head in order to make the call. Now, this is kind of important because of one of the limitations of the app, which I'll share with you later, in the fact that the actual number that you're calling is going to be shown small under the big number. So when you're having it here, you can't see that number. And the moment they answer, you put them on speaker, and then, of course, it becomes an obvious effect because they have answered based on the number that the spectator has called, or at least that is the apparent effect. Okay, so that proximity is usually going to be the best thing. Now, of course, if you want to have it immediate for any reason, then the moment that they go ahead and click on the call, it will show the other number underneath. And especially if you're doing it unmasked, okay, then they're going to see the numbers. So, for example, if you're doing something like, you know, sometimes you think that you're calling one number, but you end up calling another, and that's how you can kind of get them into that like idea as well. So that's where you could use that effect. Okay, so now let's look at the setup and the effect for the setup. So let us assume, first of all, that you are essentially going to use a card. Now, in this particular case, you're going to get the spectator to essentially choose, let's say, the Jack of Hearts. Now, this is done through a forced card process. Now, there's a lot of different forced card processes. I'm not going to teach you that. You can find a lot of them on YouTube, and of course, as I mentioned before, you can find a lot of really great stuff on Magic Stream at theillusionist.com. But once you have decided what card or what effect you're going to do, okay, so we're going to go for the Jack of Hearts for this demonstration. Now, then you're going to go into the setup section and you're going to type in, let's say, for example, the name of this person, because remember, part of the effect is going to be that they're going to see a contact with all of the stuff that is very personalized about them. So they are, the first contact is going to have, let's say, for example, the name is going to be Jack Hart. Now, of course, the number in the contact sections, you'll see that there's a place for a number. So let's say it's 5551212, and that is the name or the number of the person that is actually going to pretend to be Jack Hart. Now, remember that this effect requires a person to be on the other line and pretend to essentially be somebody else that they have called or being somewhere else. So remember that number, no matter what number they call, that number is the one that's going to be called. So if they call the police department, it's still going to call 5551212, and the person that you have already pre-arranged this with is going to answer the phone. But of course, you also want to make this really personalized, right? So you don't want to just kind of, you know, have the guessing of the card and everything, because at the end, remember that you're going to show them your contacts and they're going to see what's in there. And the first thing is going to be that name, okay? The number that they will see is not 5551212. The number that they're going to see is the number that they typed in. So from their perspective, Jack Heart's number is going to be whatever number they typed in. All right? So if you want to also get further information, you could say, for example, type in what is your birthday, you know, the date and the month and the year, for example, and that will be the phone number that you're going to do with some kind of random thing in the beginning so that it looks like it's a real number. So the second thing that you want to do in this is to type something in the notes. Now, the notes would be related to something personal about that person. Now, maybe you're out on the street or you're doing something and you have typed in previously a beautiful blue-eyed woman will choose the Jack of Hearts. Now, of course, if you're going to write something like that, you're going to need to look for a blue-eyed woman. And of course, that appears that it's very specific about her because, oh my gosh, I have blue eyes. How did you, you know, it's like, how did they know? And of course, then there's the second one. And the second element here is going to be the nickname. Now, if you happen to know that person's nickname, you could say Jane, let's say, for example, okay, or actually that would be her name. So you could also just say Jane's innermost desire, okay, or something like that, related to something that you're going to connect to this story, because you could always come up with a story that the Jack of Hearts is, you know, related to, you know, somebody that is longing for their soulmate or whatever, okay? And you can come up with all kinds of really cool ideas that are going to make this more interesting. So you, of course, the final thing to do is put the picture, and you can just put a picture of yourself holding the Jack of Hearts, or you can put yourself or a picture of the card somewhere. It doesn't really matter, okay? So now what you've got is the opportunity so that no matter what number they call, that it's going to go to your friend who is going to say he's Jack Heart, or he's just going to say that, you know, you can always say that it's some, you know, whatever, and that person can go ahead and just say that they are thinking of the Jack of Hearts. And so that person is predetermined going to know that you have chosen the Jack of Hearts, and, you know, please tell people that you're going to call them so that they don't like, what? All right, so now all of that is going to be in there. So now here's how the effect is going to look. Okay, you're going to go up to a spectator, and you're going to basically choose somebody that is connected with the personalized information that you have already put into the app. So now you're going to get them to choose the card that you have forced upon them. And now you're going to get them to think, okay, so I want you to imagine this card. Now I want you to imagine that your brain is like Wi-Fi on steroids, and that it can touch every other mind across the globe. And you can even, you know, have it so that they type in a French country code, for example. And so that's like, wow, there's somebody, okay, so imagine that there is somebody in France, okay? And you can say, so I want you to think of you could even say, think of like your ultimate ideal soulmate. And imagine that this is like, okay, so like Jack of Hearts, that's what it represents. And you can kind of play on that. And whatever you get them to kind of come up with, whatever the story is, you're getting them to imagine this. And now you're going to say, okay, so we're going to call, and we're going to see what happens, and we're going to get this person, okay, to be connected with you psychically. And we're going to get them to imagine what you are seeing in your mind right now. And so then, of course, they're going to say, oh, it's the Jack of Hearts, and like, well, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I never thought this would happen, and so on, so on, so on. Okay, but then you're going to say, but I actually knew this would happen. See, before I came here, I knew that I was going to meet you, and I knew that you would choose the Jack of Hearts, and I knew that you were going to call this number. And you look into your, and I even made a contact in my phone, very specific to everything that we've just talked about. And so you open your contacts, and there is a picture of the Jack of Hearts, and there is the person's name who you called, and there is the personalized information about the person doing the calling, and then of course the nickname related to whatever is going on with that, or however you're connecting it to the effect. And they're going to go, oh my gosh. And so that is one of the first effects that you can do. If you want to be sure that, just in case you're doing this in a group of people and there's others that want to do it too, you don't want to do the exact same effect again, but you can still use the same concept where basically somebody is going to be calling somebody, and so you can turn on the second setup. Now that second setup, I would recommend do something else, like for example a drawing. So for example, you could get somebody to, let's say, draw something cool that is nearby, where you already kind of are forcing them to do that. Now, how do you force people to draw some things? Like, so you ask them to look around you, okay? And of course, you're going to do this in a situation, because remember, the person you're calling needs to be able to tell them exactly what they are drawing, right? And of course, you're not going to SMS them or call them and tell them what it's going to be. So what you're going to do is you have some kind of an idea where maybe it's a house, or maybe it's something like that, that's going to be easy. It's going to be something that is going to be common, and something where you can say, okay, hey, look around, what do you see? Okay, well, I see some I see some houses. All right, okay, so pick a house. All right, well, okay, I like this house. Okay, and if they don't say I see houses, then you say, okay, well, what else do you see? All right, so now basically you just keep asking them some questions and narrowing it down until essentially they pick a house, okay, or a tree. Okay, so if there's like houses and stuff around, so what's around the houses? So you just kind of ask certain questions. And so, okay, what I'd like you to do is, okay, so you've picked the tree or the house, right? So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to draw a picture of this house or of this tree or whatever it is that they picked, okay? And then you kind of go through this process, and you're going to say, okay, so see, the vibes that you're expressing in this is going to be so powerful that what we're going to do is we're going to basically do this exact same thing. We're going to call somebody else, and now we're going to see if we can, promote this psychic connection to them so that they will be able to guess exactly what you've drawn, and so on. All right? And so now what happens is the second time you do it, even though you haven't touched your phone again, because this is an automatic thing, so the phone is automatically going to go to the next step. And that is going to show, now it's going to go to a different number, of course, that you have chosen, or it could be the same, but probably if they're going to answer it, they have to have a different voice. Or maybe you get like one person to answer it the first time, and the second person, it doesn't matter. Anyway, of course, if you've got a second person, maybe the first one is a male, the second one is a female, it makes it a lot easier to create a more effective wow. So then they're going to basically say, well, I'm thinking, okay, and you get them to say, okay, so I want you to think of this tree, I want you to think of this tree. And then this second person will say, oh, I'm thinking of a tree. Okay, and like, whoa, okay. So this is part of the second half of the effect. And so just like in the first setup, here you're going to put a picture of a tree that is going to be similar. And remember that how you connect with a person, the questions you ask, and some of the things you say about the creating guidelines for them to draw it is going to help them to more or less draw something very similar. So you could say something like, okay, well, now I want you to draw whatever it is that you see it, draw it in geometric shape. So how many geometric shapes are there? There's a triangle, there's a circle, there's a square, right? So you can do a house with a triangle and a square. You can do a tree with a rectangle and a circle. So you can make it simple where it creates something that is very easy to predict. And then of course you have a picture of that inside of this contact that you have created, knowing this person is going to do it and so on. And of course you try to, of course, hopefully make sure that if there's in a group that you have identified the person that is going to have something more generic, maybe dark hair, whatever, and they're or wearing black or wearing red or something like that, that is going to create that that sense of personalization again, right? So you can, if somebody says, oh, I bet you can't do it again, then you just pick the person that is wearing black, wearing red. There's got to be somebody doing, you know, or somebody that's got dark hair. I mean, the dark hair is more people wearing dark hair, but not that many people wearing red or black. So, and of course you personalize it accordingly. So having the picture is going to have that extra wow effect, especially if it's very close. And of course the other person on the other side, if you just tell them, well, think of like some geometric shapes, and they think of, oh, okay, they're doing the tree, it's a circle and it's a rectangle and it makes a tree. And like, wow, okay. So again, creating that connection where it seems impossible. And as a grand finale, there is one more thing that you can do with this app. Now, if you are an experienced magician or mentalist, well, then you've probably heard of Mnemonica or the Mnemonica stack. If you haven't, look it up on Google. It is pretty cool, basically. Anyway, just look it up. So what you can do with this is, because the cards are at specific locations in the deck, that means that when somebody types a number, within 10 seconds of typing that number, and or if it comes back after you've already finished calling them, you will be able to see at the bottom of the call screen 2 Mnemonica stacked cards. That means if you don't happen to remember the entire stack, you'll be able to literally identify the first number. So for example, in this particular case, the first number is going to be 3, and the third card is the 7 of diamonds. So that means if they type a 3, and of course zeros don't count, right? In the first part of the number, that will show you that card. Now, the end of the number, okay, is going to show whatever the last 2 numbers are. So in this particular case, the last 2 numbers are 11, which in the Mnemonica stack shows you the Queen of Hearts. Now, what's really cool about this is you can say, okay, so you've all chosen this number at random. Now, I just want you to look at the last 2 numbers that you picked right here. So now, here's a deck of cards, and let me see if I can imagine, okay, what the number 11 card, or the 11th card would be. And then you basically guess somehow, or you draw, or you kind of write it down on a piece of paper, and you say, okay, this is what I have put down, all right? And you give them the piece of paper that says Queen of Hearts, or has a picture of the Queen of Hearts, and then you ask them to count 11 cards down, and then it's like, it's Queen of Hearts, and then they look at the piece of paper, it's like, oh my gosh, how did you know? Okay, and it's, you know, and you tell them, of course, it's all psychically connected, and you just kind of weave it in to whatever it is. Now, if you are doing this as part of a show, if you're doing this as a speaker or a trainer, just to kind of get people, you know, to think that you are some super awesome crazy person that can read minds and does stuff. I mean, again, the whole point of this is making things fun and exciting. Remember that this is just some possibilities. I highly recommend that you go to theillusionist.com, get ideas. Peter Turner there is amazing, and if you want to really learn some serious mentalism, because I am a psychologist and a speaker, and I use this only for fun and just to kind of pepper a few ideas here and there to add to the mystery of the things I do. But for the most part, I am not a professional mentalist or magician. Well, the people there, they are, and they can just teach you this to the point of absolute art. And don't forget to check out The Original Effect by Mark Kerstein on illusionist.com. And of course, get the app on Play Store at the link below, or look for Diverter. Plus, if you have any questions, just send an email to support@directivecommunication.com. See ya.